Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the podcast, The Endurance of Labor Laws. I am your lovely host. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I am your lovely host, Lesley Sullivan. And today is episode 114. And we are going to take a look at the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, the Office of Law Enforcement. So this is an agency within a federal agency. So this is a law enforcement agency that is under the umbrella of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. So it's kind of like their own little police force. It's not little, but I'm saying that in order for rules, laws, and regulations to be enforced, you basically have to have law enforcement. If you don't have law enforcement, it would be like having a city or a town and you've passed all these rules and laws and bylaws, but you have no one to enforce it, no one to write the tickets, no one to make the arrest. Well, then what's the point of having your rules or laws on the books if people can break them because they know you don't have a police force? So this is one of those examples where there is a police force, and it's very important about what they do because they preserve the ecosystem here in the United States, and it's very important. So let's go ahead and take a look at this puppy. Okay, so the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, the Office of Law Enforcement, was formed in 1900, so a good while ago. The governing body is the U.S. government. They are headquartered in Falls Church, Virginia. They have 261 special agents. Their agency executive, the guy in charge, is William Woody, and he is the chief of law enforcement. Their parent agency is the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. So let's go ahead and dive into this one. It says the United States Fish and Wildlife Service Office of Law Enforcement contributes to service efforts to manage ecosystems, save endangered species, conserve migratory birds, preserve wildlife habitat, restore fisheries, combat invasive species, and promote international wildlife conservation. The Office of Law Enforcement focuses on potentially devastating threats to wildlife, illegal trade, unlawful commercial exploitation, habitat destruction, and environmental contaminants. And that would also coincide with some of the Superfund sites that we have, because sometimes, like if there's a chemical spill, sometimes these people will intervene with that because it can affect our ecosystems and the environment. Goes on to say the Office of Law Enforcement investigates wildlife crimes, regulates wildlife trade, helps Americans understand and obey wildlife protections laws, and works in partnership with international, state, and tribal counterparts to conserve wildlife resources. This work includes breaking up international and domestic smuggling rings that target imperiled animals, preventing the unlawful commercial exploitation of protected U.S. species, protecting wildlife from environmental hazards and safeguarding critical habitat for endangered species, enforcing federal migratory game bird hunting regulations, and working with states to protect other game species from illegal take and preserve legitimate hunting opportunities, inspecting wildlife shipments to ensure compliance with laws and treaties and detect illegal trade, working with international counterparts to combat illegal trafficking and protecting species, training other federal, state, tribal, and foreign law enforcement officers. Another aspect of this is distributing information and outreach materials to increase public understanding of wildlife conservation and promote compliance with wildlife protection laws. Now, a little bit about their special agents. It says, in order to become a special agent, an applicant must be between the ages of 23 and 37. The applicant must also hold American citizenship, have a clean record, and hold a 4-year bachelor's degree. In addition, all special agents are required to sign a mobility agreement, which indicates a willingness to accept a reassignment to any location as dictated by the needs of the service. Now, what's interesting about that is that they can be relocated anywhere where they are needed. So just think about the different areas of the United States that maybe they have more issues with illegal smuggling as opposed to other areas. You know, we had this happen here in Oklahoma, and it was very unfortunate. Unfortunately, the Chinese strike again at the lovely communist country. So, a international ring of smugglers of reptile species, they were coming into our country unlawfully. these Chinese smugglers, and they were confiscating and stealing thousands upon thousands of turtles from the United States, specifically from Oklahoma, and it has been affecting our ecosystems. And what they were doing was they were paying the locals thousands of dollars to illegally hunt down these turtles and ship them over to China because the Chinese will eat anything. I mean, they don't care about their own ecosystem. They don't care that they've already ruined parts of their ecosystem in their country. So they are willing to steal and confiscate species from our country and from our ecosystems. That actually happened here in Oklahoma, and they got caught. So, I mean, it's like catching one is like a dime a dozen, but we still need to go after them and get them to stop doing that because it's very illegal and unlawful, and it's horrible to our environment. It's really bad. So it says here, special agents enforce laws regarding the conservation and preservation of many plant and animal species throughout the United States and being brought into the country from elsewhere. Special agents primarily focus on the enforcement of the following federal laws, and these are very interesting. The first one is the Lacey Act, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, the Endangered Species Act, the Migratory Bird Hunting and Conservation Stamp Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Airborne Hunting Act, the National Wildlife Refuge System Administration Act, the African Elephant Conservation Act, the Wild Bird Conservation Act, the Rhino and Tiger Conservation Act, the Antarctic Conservation Act, and the Archaeological Resources Protection Act of 1979. So later in time, we will go through these because these are very interesting. I'm pretty sure, we have a general idea about the Endangered Species Act and the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, here in the United States, the bald eagle and golden eagle were almost made extinct because they were being overhunted. So it's a good thing that the people in times past really put their foot down and said, hey, we cannot be overhunting like this. It will cause a big problem. So good for them. I'm glad that these people cared. Now, in regards to the offices that this law enforcement has, it says the Office of Law Enforcement is headquartered in Falls Church, Virginia, and there are 8 regional offices. Then in regards to some of the work that they do, it says in Operation Chameleon, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the special agents undertook action against several internationally operating reptile smuggling networks. One of those happened here in Oklahoma. The investigations led to several convictions. In her book, Hunt for Justice, retired Special Agent Lucinda Schroeder details the service's undercover program to arrest and convict Alaskan hunting guides who were conducting illegal hunts in Alaska's northern Brooks Range. Now, here's what really disappoints me about locals that do things like that. These international smugglers and these people that commit crimes here in the United States, there's no way that they could get access to our wildlife unless they hired a local to do it, which is very sad because that's basically turning on your country if you're enabling a foreign entity to confiscate, the species from your environment and from your ecosystem. So basically these people could be bought and sold to the highest bidder in terms of their services, which is very unfortunate. It's stupid and they're breaking the law, but it does happen, and some of that happened here in Oklahoma in regards to these Chinese smugglers that were confiscating and stealing thousands upon thousands of turtles from Oklahoma. And there may be some people that don't care about turtles. I've met some morons that don't care about turtles. But here's the thing. When you completely remove something from your ecosystem, it's almost impossible to ever get it back. And so then your ecosystem is permanently damaged. So it's one of those things that we can't really pull a Jurassic Park moment and pull DNA off of sap on a tree and start making stuff in a lab to try and recreate what we know was destroyed. So we need to be careful about those things and take it seriously. Because, even though I'm not like a huge environmental nut or anything, I do believe in being a good steward of what God has given us. And I think we need to protect our environment and we need to, make sure that we preserve it and that we have something to pass on to younger generations. We need to pass something on to our children and our children's children, because if we're not taking care of it during our lifetime and we're not setting the standard of what should be done, then we are really throwing in the towel on doing what's right and fighting the good fight, you know what I mean? Because look, as much as the United States is not a perfect country, we are still number one, and we are a very good country compared to any other country on the face of this earth, especially China. Because we are not communist and we do not have human rights violations like they do. And the United States does not go into other countries and illegally confiscate animals or plants from their ecosystems. We don't do that. People do that to us, and it sucks, and I disagree with it. And unfortunately, we don't always call people out on this stuff, but we need to. And the good thing about this Office of Law Enforcement within the United States Fish and Wildlife Service is they go after the bad people that do those bad things. Because what we know is that when someone is willing to break the law in one arena, more than likely they are breaking laws in several arenas. That's why sometimes these people have multiple convictions, is because they're not just committing one act of crime. Like, they're not just breaking one or two laws. They're probably breaking quite a few. Which technically, I know, for example, with Oklahoma, with what the problems we've had here with these illegal smugglers from China, not only are they breaking laws in terms of conservation issues, but they're also breaking laws in terms of our banking laws, because it's not right to accept funds from a international entity that is a pretty bad country, and they're asking you to do something illegal, and the reason why you're getting paid is because you are committing a illegal act. So it's almost like a wire fraud violation. So people need to be careful about that. I mean, I understand that sometimes people need money, but you should never sell out your morals and values and ethics just for the sake of currency. It's never worth it. And unfortunately, that's what happened in Alaska, and that's what happened here in Oklahoma. So, needless to say, greed is not just on Wall Street, and the reason why greed happens outside of Wall Street is because people don't think to look there. And guess what? The Chinese know that. And these other corrupt governments, they know that. They know that our country is so obsessed with Wall Street and hitting the rich and things like that, that we're not going to think to look in remote areas or unpopular states like Oklahoma. I love my state. I love my home state, but I know we're not considered the same as California or Florida or New York. I mean, I'm not putting my state down, not by any means, but, I know that people don't always think the best about Oklahoma. Sometimes they think we're a bunch of country bumpkins, because I know that when I travel for work, that people are shocked that I'm from Oklahoma. It's like they're surprised I'm educated. And they're surprised I don't sound like a hick. It's like, wow, maybe you need to get out of your state and meet some more people, because we're not all the same, But, needless to say, I wish more people cared about the environment and did not sell out. Because that really greatly disappoints me when people sell out for something that really puts our environment, and it also puts our country at risk. That really, it greatly disappoints me, because I just think, that's not something I would do. Like, if someone approached me and said, hey, I'll pay you $10,000 to go snatch up all these turtles out of every creek you can find, I'd be like, why do you want all these turtles? I would think, well, those turtles belong in nature. They don't belong to you. And they should not be shipped out to another country. They need to stay here because, these turtles or whatever the wildlife is in question, they belong to the United States. They belong to us. They don't belong to any other country. So when something belongs to the United States, we technically as citizens don't have the right to sell it. Otherwise, you're breaking the law, because, if you go out in nature and you pick up all these turtles and you sell them, they were not your property. Like, sometimes when people go out in nature and they, are picking flowers and things like that, hey, that's one thing. But if you're confiscating the the animal life and claiming it as your own and then selling it, that's illegal because you didn't actually have the right to sell that animal, nor did you have the right to entrap it. Like that's part of the problems with this. Like that's one of the things that this agency looks into, and that's why they have law enforcement. So that's why it's an agency within an agency. It's because you have the parent agency, which is the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. We know they have all these rules, laws, and regulations, and in regards to those acts that protect the wildlife of this country and the ecosystems, well, the way that you enforce those is you have law enforcement. And they're trained on all these laws, so they know what to look for, and they do go after people and arrest them, because they know that if they are willing to break these laws here, more likely they are willing to break other laws if they have not already broken other laws already. Because sometimes criminals tend to be really dumb. They tend to think, well, I'm just doing this over here. But what they don't realize is that they're actually committing way more than they realize. See, that is the stupidity of breaking the law. That's typically why people have multiple convictions, is because they're so stupid they don't realize what all they have done that is illegal and immoral, and it's really sad. Because, there's only so much that ignorance will be bliss, you know what I mean? Because technically, if you're age 18 or older, you are considered an adult, and you don't have an excuse to break any law. I mean, you might be able to work out leniency or clemency or whatever the word is, but I mean, do you really trust a prosecutor to care about you? No. Prosecutors, the way that they get promoted and get raises is based on how many people they put in jail. So what makes you think they're going to feel sorry for you? Do you think they're going to value you more than their career and getting in the newspaper and being talked about online and in the news? No, like they're not going to be gentle with you on something like that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, be careful about what you do, and be careful about what rules, laws, or regulations you break or violate, because sometimes people end up breaking laws and they may or may not always realize it, but here's the thing. If you know that you are getting paid under the table for a job, then that probably should tell you that it's not really on the up and up. And if something is not on the up and up, you should not be involved in it. So I'm saying walk away from it, because it's not worth throwing your life away just for a stupid jail sentence. I mean, do you really want to make new friends that way? I mean, think about it. So just be aware of those things, because these are actual laws in regards to fish and wildlife and our ecosystems, and they're very important because, think about it, if we did not have a law enforcement agency that was going after people that were basically trying to ruin our ecosystem, our environment would have so many more problems. And here's another thing, we would not have as much wildlife. We would have more and more endangered or extinct species. And that's not what we want. Like, we're trying to preserve and make things better, not make things worse. So that's one reason why this agency is so very important. And it really does speak to my heart on this, because of some of the things that have happened here in Oklahoma. And sometimes people, because they think we're a bunch of hicks and a bunch of country bumpkins, they don't really care what happens here in Oklahoma. And it's like, oh, really? Well, I care what happens in your state. Because we are the United States. We are supposed to care about each other. And the good thing about this agency is that they have regions all over the United States. They have 8 regions, but they are responsible for the entire United States. Like, they don't just go, oh, California and Florida and New York, they're the only ones we care about because they're the fancy popular states. No. Every state is important, and also our territories, but especially the states. So just think about how much land and how many cases they probably have and how much work they do, because they only have 8 regional offices, and just think about the population of the United States. and how large a landmass the United States is. And I mean, just think about their territory is the entire United States. Like that's quite a responsibility. So they do a lot to protect and preserve the fish and wildlife here in the United States, the ecosystem, and the environment. So kudos to them. I give them a gold star. I greatly appreciate them and all the good work that they do. But that is it for this lovely podcast. And let me see if there's anything that we should be celebrating in terms of the month of June, because I did have my list, but I'm not sure where I put it. So hold on just a second. I think there was a National Camping Month, and there was National Dairy Month, and then something else. I've lost my list. But anyway, just be aware of those good things that the Fish and Wildlife Service does and what their law enforcement does, and how much they do to care about the United States and how much training they have as well. It's not a simple training. It's actually very detailed. It's very detailed, almost like being an FBI agent, so it's nothing to sneeze at. Oh, and I just found my list. So it is, for the month of June, it is National Great Outdoors Month. Well, that is perfect, because we were just talking about the outdoors and our ecosystem. So for sure, celebrate the month of June by going to a national park. I think that would be wonderful. But until next time, I will go ahead and end this podcast. But for sure, I pray that you're happy, healthy, and whole. And until next time, just stay blessed and be blessed. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.